Hey, everybody, welcome to the Moms Like Me podcast. I'm Jade, and I'm so excited to sit down and talk to other moms. My vision for these conversations is to have a little fun, keep it lighthearted, and maybe throw in a little inspiration when we can. I hope you enjoy this episode of Moms Like Me. All right, welcome everybody. I'm excited to introduce my guest for today. Her name is Charlotte Wilson, and she just so happens to be my Nana. So welcome, Nana.
Thank you.
So why don't you introduce yourself, how long you've been married, how many kids do you have, grandkids, and I guess great grandkids. You're a great Nana.
That's right. And it gets better all the time. Well, I have been married as of the 25th, 58 years.
Wow.
And I have two daughters, Datha Wilson Whitfield and Amy Wren Edwards. And then I also have a daughter in heaven, and her name was Tanya.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have Jade and her husband, Jeremy, are my grandchildren, and then they produced a wonderful thing. I have a great-grandson that lives close to me, and he is Teddy, and he's a year old. Then I have Jordan Bowe and Chelsea Whitfield. They're in Vicksburg, Mississippi. And they have Layla Grace, who is 2, and Raylan, who is 8. And then I have 2 grandchildren in Texas, Lola Claire Edwards, who is 11 years old, and Brody Wilson Edwards, who is about to be 14 in October. So my grandchildren are 35 to 11, and I must not forget my teenage granddaughter, Sophie.
I forgot about Sophie.
How could you do that? Sophie, who lives here, and we've got to see her grow up. And Jade. I tended to Jade when she was little, and like her mother said, she was so easy.
That's how I turned out so wonderful, because you kept me.
That's probably right.
Mm-hmm. So, I have some questions for you in no particular order, and you have to answer them openly and honestly. Does that sound good?
Well, I'll try.
So my first question for you, what was it like trying to parent with someone who has a completely different discipline style from yourself?
Oh, and you have experienced that with Teddy.
Yes.
Yes. I'm talking about with my husband, Daryl, who believes that every child should never be told no. And that was pretty frustrating at times and downright aggravating sometimes. And sometimes I felt like throwing my shoe at him or some other heavier object, because he always believed that your whole life purpose should be centered around your children, which, that's good in a way. You should be centered around them to a point, but I tried to teach them to pick their toys up, and they would actually go whisper in his ear when I wasn't around, and I would think, boy, they did a good job, and then I would find out that their dad did that. And he would scarcely ever tell them no. I used to say, if they said, Daddy, go lay down in front of that car and let it run over you, that he would say, well, okay. And, he didn't ever want to say no. But he was their playmate.
You've said
when there were not playmates around.
That's nice. But you have said before you're surprised that especially my mom, Datha, turned out as well as she did because she got to do whatever she wanted.
Yes, I always said that if it wasn't for me, she would be in the chain gang because she was very, very mischievous. She did a lot of things to a lot of different people. She used to entertain our guests. I didn't find this out until she was older. If we had children, and I'd say, go play together while we're talking, the adults, she would go in the bathroom and be the magician and pour alcohol on her hand and set her hand on fire.
Oh, my God. Where did she learn
And
that?
I don't know where she learned that, but she would.
We'll have her on the podcast to demonstrate that magic trick.
And I didn't know it for some time. And she was always mischievous. And one time my dad was watching TV and she wanted to watch something else. Now, she wasn't very old, probably 4. And he kept saying no, no, and she'd go out of the room. And the last time he told her no, she came back in with a whip, a leather whip that had a long wood knob on it. And all of a sudden, we heard my dad screaming, "Oh!" And she had taken that whip and whirled it around.
Oh, my gosh.
And struck him on the head.
Oh, my gosh. Did she get in trouble after that?
Well, my daddy said, if I hadn't have been so near knocked out, I would have whipped her. And Mother came running with ice and everything, made a big mark on his head because it was bald.
It was bald. Oh, gosh.
And your dad took her in the bathroom supposedly to spank her, but he didn't spank her.
There's no way.
He did not spank her. And he was trying to discipline her, and he was laughing because she was extremely mischievous. And she was the only child. She's 6 years older than Wren. And at that time, she was still the only child.
I've also heard lots of stories of how she used to torment her younger sister.
Yes. Usually she would slip around and do it. And I wasn't there, when she would do it. But then later, Wren would tell us, she would put on a spooky record and shut her up in the room and say, if you tell Mom and Dad, I'm going to get you. And so I think Wren had a fear complex of her growing up.
I'm sure. Well, I told Pawpaw that he's never made me mad my whole life until I became a mom. So for 30 years, I've always loved Pawpaw. He let us do whatever we want until I became a mom. And then he started annoying me and frustrating me because he thinks that Teddy needs more toys. They should be in the floor.
Constantly in the floor.
He should just be able to do, break, tear up anything he wants. So eat anything he wants. So we disagree a lot. So I'm sorry that you had to parent
with him.
So difficult.
Yes. Well, Wren was never that mischievous at all. So the Lord blessed me with one that was calmer. But she did do a few little things, but nothing like
that.
Well, one thing I do remember she did to get her sister back. Her sister had company. A guy had come over, and they were in the living room. And Wren wasn't but about 4, I guess. And she came out of Datha's room with a bra. And she went in there, started laughing and twirling it over the guy's head and her head and everything. So that pretty much that was her one get back thing. She might not remember that, but I do remember that.
Oh, my word. So if you could go back and change something about the way you parented, is there anything you would change?
Well, parenting takes a lot of patience if you do it right. Someone once said that there is no there's no way to be a perfect mother, but there's 100 ways to be a good mother.
That's good.
So we're never perfect, but there are things we can do that are good. I guess the thing I would change the most, I would try to take a little bit. Back in my day, my mother raised me. Our house was spick and span clean. That was a very big thing in her whole family. And you kept your house clean. You kept things picked up off of the floor. Yeah. And then you kept your laundry up. You cooked. We didn't go out much. You cooked and you washed dishes. And that was really important back in raising, because that's the way my mother did, And she had 4. There were 4 of us. And she would get us all ready for church. My brother Glenn and I, there's just 2.5 years between us. So, and then my brother Gary, there's about 4.5 between me and him. And then David is the baby. So he was 5 when I got married. But you always wish. My mother told me that one time, and I almost fainted because I could have never asked for a better mother. She said, there are things that I regret, and I wish I'd have been a better mother. And I have never forgotten that, which she could not have been a better mother to us, And so there are always, thank God, there's nothing major that I wished I had done that I didn't. But there are little things, and I think they will always be there for all. They'll say, oh, I wish I would have done this, or I would have done that,
Always little things. So what is parenting advice or lessons that you have passed down to your own children as they became parents? So anything you passed down to Mom or Ren?
Always take your children to church. Always. If they say, I don't want to go, say, you're going anyway. And we were involved in the ministry for years, and they were smaller, and I played the piano or the organ, whichever one I was needed on. And I always took them. They took their Barbies, usually, and they sat together. And they knew how to behave, in church. But I had them something to do. You can't make a 3 and 4 and 5 and even 6-year-old sit there without. And I took them either in color books and crayons, or either their Barbies to. I think Ren and Datha both learned how to fix their hair on Barbie, and But I have passed it down to them, hopefully the legacy of going to church, being involved in church, and the great legacy that my mother left for her children was a legacy of prayer. We heard her praying every single night of her life. Even into her 90s, I went to her house to spend the night. I went to see her, spend the night, and everybody was coming the next day, and there was a crowd already. So I had worked my way down there to Seminary, Mississippi, where she was living. And she said, go get in the bed with me. You sleep with me tonight, and these others can sleep around. So we did, but I was so tired, I went to bed early. And I heard her creep in and go to her bathroom, which was hooked onto her bedroom, and pray, and not just call this one, that one, the other one. She called all the family members, all her children's members in their family. She called her sisters, and she prayed and talked to God. And those prayers, I believe, are what has sustained us a lot of times. And she passed down, oh goodness, so many good things that I learned from her. Prayer, and I would call her after she got older, and I said, what you doing? Oh, I'm reading my Sunday school lesson, or I'm reading the Bible. And she stood on Scripture. This is one she quoted all the time. she quoted this. I've heard her say it 50 times, probably or 100. Train up a child in the way it should go, and when it is old, it won't depart. And she would stop right there. She said, it didn't say that they might not depart or they will not depart. It said they will not that they will depart, but they will not depart from it. So that is one of the greatest things you can pass down to your children, to have strong faith in God and what He can do, and not only that, but what He will do if you express your faith.
That's beautiful. And I remember one time, Jeremy, my husband, the first time I think he ever went with us to Mississippi to stay at Mama Hazel's house, and he slept on the couch, and I think I'll have to get him to remind me, but she came in there and knelt by her chair and did her normal prayers, and he heard her call every name, and that was just something that he didn't get to meet her or be around her a lot, but he got to see that, and that's so special. So yeah, you've definitely passed that down to your children and grandchildren, and now your great grandchildren. So what are some differences you've noticed between parenting when you were raising your children and now watching your children raise their children? So what's some differences you notice?
Oh my, of course, the age of technology has taken over our children. I mean, they are obsessed almost with it. And cell phones.
Yes.
Teddy, you can't take his picture hardly anymore.
No.
He wants your cell phone.
That's right.
And then Layla Grace's iPad, and she's 2, and he's 1, and they're already more techie than I am. And, of course, my children in Texas, my grandchildren there, they blow me away with what they can do. And I'll hand one of them my phone. Can you do this? And it takes them all of 1 second flat to do it. But that can be a help and a detriment. You have to really keep your eyes on it.
Yeah.
Because of the world we live in today is not the world that I grew up in. And or either you.
Yeah.
I mean, you're only 30, but you didn't grow in that. And so parents need to make sure they know what their children are watching, are listening to, are, doing in this age. And I know a lot of times it's very, very easy to just give them this and give them that and let them sit in front of the TV. I can tell you mine, when we finally got a TV, I remember that I monitored what the children, what Dathan and Ren would watch. And I was walking through there one day, and what is that? Was that program about outer space? Long time.
Oh, gosh.
It had, the guy had the crazy ears and stuff on it, and it was just about an outer space program, which was very, you don't know, but I can't think about it. I know some of the listeners will probably think about what it was. And Datha looked at Ren and said, "You might as well turn it. Mama's not going to let us watch that." And it was so mild compared to today,
Right.
But monitor what your children are feeding into their little brains.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to monitor that. And that's a big difference today.
Yeah. Somebody asked me recently, they were like, "You just live at the park with Teddy." And I said, "Well, we have to get out every day and go to the park or go visit grandparents, because if I let him, he would stare at the TV all day."
Yes.
he loves it.
But thankfully it's Miss Rachel.
Yeah, he watches a lot of educational things, but still, even if it's just on, I'll catch him staring at it.
Yes.
So yeah, that's definitely different. What's a parenting trend today that you see that drives you crazy?
Ooh, well, I will probably be stepping on people's toes right here.
That's okay.
But letting your young teenage daughters wear clothing where their rear end sticks out. I just had this experience over at Walmart. Teenagers, and I could actually see their butts. Pardon me. Pardon me, listeners, but that's it was. And I thought, they don't have the money to buy clothing like that, and it is. They don't need to be doing that because of the world we live in. Mm-hmm. It's a different world, a different time. And the Bible teaches about that modesty, and I'm not talking about wearing your dresses to the floor and wearing turtleneck sweaters or shirts all the time. But the trend, and two, a young man walking down the road, his breeches were under his butt. I mean, it's a wonder I didn't go off the road. He did have on underwear, thank the Lord.
Thank goodness.
Although it's probably going to get to where they're not.
Yeah, that's true.
But trendy mothers and daddies, you are buying the clothing. Make them, make sure they're decent, just plain old-fashioned, common sense should tell you, don't let your children do it. Well, if you're doing it, though, they're going to copy you.
That's true.
So be careful. Be careful.
We need fashion tips from Miss Charlotte, because you're a very fashionable, well-dressed, seasoned lady.
I always dress for church, and the reason I do, it is the most important place I'm going that week. It's just something I do, because my mother would have me starched and ironed, and roll up my hair as I did. Ren and Datha had to sleep in those old foam curlers.
Yes.
And, that is what I think you should do when you go to church. Don't look like you come in from hoeing in the garden and scratching in the dirt.
Well, my hair and makeup will be done, but I can't promise you that I'm not going to be in blue jeans.
Well, blue jeans are
without holes. Is that okay?
Yes,
okay.
Blue jeans are fine. If you have nothing else, that's fine. And if you want something better, come look in my closet. I'll be glad to share. I won't share no booty shorts. I promise you.
I love that. So I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. So what do you enjoy most about being a Nana?
Well, it's just a continuation of great love. I don't know if it's greater, but getting to see your children and grandchildren parenting, I just love it, to see them do that. And the fact that when we get real worn out, it's not a 24/7 with us, And I believe you have a lot more patience because of that. So, because toddlers will wear you out. Somebody said one time that silence is golden, but I refute that. Not if you have a toddler, because they are into something. And I have heard some horror stories about what you thought they had chocolate candy in their hand,
gosh.
and it wasn't.
Oh
but
gosh!
You don't get too much. You can't take your eyes off of them. When
you really can't. I called Teddy. Normally, I call him Teddy Tornado when he's in the mood to dig through the trash can, open every drawer. And then today I said, he is a Category 5 hurricane. Dad, you need to come home. So
yes, the life of a toddler, and that lasts a pretty good, about till age 3, I would say.
Great.
At least. So enjoy. Take your vitamins, all you mothers out there that
Yes.
need energy. And there's another thing that I did for my children that I don't know if my children's children do it. We had music at our house all the time. I sang to my children and my grandchildren and now my great-grandbabies. I rocked and sang, and I sang the old hymns to them, I remember Tell Me the Story of Jesus. I've sung that to all of y'all. Y'all probably don't remember, but I sang that and I rocked you. And I put you to sleep with that kind of music. And later I have studied a lot about music, what it does for you. That kind of music, not rap. But the old hymns and all, they de-stress you. And if my babies were crying sometime, I would rock them and cry, and they would be crying. And I'd keep singing, Tell Me the Story of Jesus. And I sang that one by Bill Gaither, Jesus. There's something about, it's a calming effect on them. And there's so many benefits to that. They have even proven that in babies. One hospital used to send a classical CD. It was somewhere in Georgia, home with all the newborn babies.
Interesting.
Because it was just music. It wasn't singing. But I'm sure it wasn't the da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
It was, the other type.
Yeah.
But that's one thing that I did and I enjoyed, and they seemed to enjoy it, except one time when your brother,
I was going to ask you to
it.
tell this.
Yes. I was singing to him. I thought I was doing pretty good, and he was rather mad. He was 4, and he had been staying with us for about a week, and I made him go to bed because, man, trying to do everything, I'd try to give him a nap every day. So I was rocking him, and all of a sudden he sat up in my lap and folded his hands, and he looked at me and said, Nana, why do you always have to sing to me? I don't even like your singing anyway.
Oh my gosh, I love that story.
And I have a lot of stories that my children, things they have said and done. Ren, when she was little, she used to say, that's my daddy. And I would say, no, he's not. The mailman is your daddy. And of course, I was just joking. No, he not. Yes. And she would say it, and I would say that, and it was just kind of a little game. So we went over to have dinner at a very old, sophisticated, nice couple's home. And never thinking anything about that, she stood in the middle of the floor at about 3, and she said, I can see her rocking back and forth. She said, my daddy is the mailman. And I said, I tried to holler something to say like that. And then she said, my daddy is the mailman.
Oh my God.
She got louder about 3 times. She said, my daddy is the mailman. And I said, please, I need to explain that to y'all. They never had us over anymore.
That is so funny.
Yes.
I don't think I've ever heard that. That is
so
great.
little, when I was trying to, be careful what you say.
Yeah.
I mean, it is amazing what they pick up. It is just absolutely, it'll blow your mind what they will come back with.
Oh my goodness. Well, what's one last piece of advice you have for mothers who might be listening to this podcast?
Pray for your children. Always. Never quit. Every single day of your life, pray for your children. Pray for your children. And I have been so blessed. All my children and my grandchildren are Christians. They live for God. They're in the ministry. And not because of anything I did, because I believe a lot of my mother's prayers, their prayers are in vials in heaven, and they have been poured out on us when we need it, But pray for your children, no matter if you have a little or if you have a lot. And I said their prayers with them, and they repeated them. I remember my mother doing that. I remember that far back that I would say, dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for this day. And I remember the prayer she prayed. I prayed it with my children until they got older, and I said, do you want me to pray with you, or are you going to pray before we go to sleep? Mm-hmm. And they would finally say, after they I'll pray. And I asked my grandchildren that too. You want me to say your prayers? Lola Claire is 11, and I'll ask her that. And she said, I already said them, or I said them. Make sure they know the value of prayer, and just do the best you can, And if you need help, ask for help. We've got not a lot of older people in our church, but we do have some older, even older than me. I think there's one older than me, one lady. But if you need help and something just doesn't seem right, ask for help. Don't ever be afraid to just say, I'm frustrated. I don't know how to deal with this. If your children are doing something, go in their room, those teenagers especially, and pray. And I've heard, stories about pastors, that went in, they're wild kids, and they would dream a dream or something would happen. The Lord honors it. The Lord will honor that. So keep that at the forefront of your parenting skills.
I love that. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today. And I feel like we could talk for hours. So maybe you need to be back on the podcast soon.
Okay.
If you will.
All right. I will.
And maybe we can do one with Mom too. That would be fun.
That would be an eye-opener.
All of us.
Yes, it would.
Well, thank you for being here. I love you. And why don't you babysit for me later?
Okay. I love you too.
I need help.
And I love him. Yes.
You said help. Yeah, I need help. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
See y'all next time. Thanks for listening today. If you enjoyed the podcast, please leave a review or share with a friend. And if you're interested in being on the Moms Like Me podcast, reach out to me on Instagram. This episode was produced by Cunningham Creative, a mobile podcasting service. If you'd like more information, visit cunninghamcreative.online.